How many of you have found that your mental well-being has been impacted by recent events? I'm not going to list off which events because we'll be here for the next 3 hours just talking about all the crazy stuff that's happening in the world today. It very much feels like we're in an episode of Black Mirror. You literally could not make up what's going to happen next. And, based on the trajectory of whatever the script writers have been coming up with, anything's possible. I used to joke up until very recently that based on the current trajectory, the next thing will happen is aliens will attack. Can't even joke about that anymore because, as some of you are aware, there's been a US Senate committee hearing to talk about declassifying all the information they've got on aliens. So science fiction is nowhere near as strange as science reality. And when you have arrived at a point that going outside your front door seems to be more fantastic than anything you can find on Netflix, you might need to upgrade your mental and emotional toolkit to navigate the experiences that we're having. And that's why I'm so grateful that there are so many of you here today to join this session. And how many of you have noticed that the people around you's mental and emotional well-being has been impacted? How many noticed that people are struggling more now than ever before? Absolutely. And if you haven't noticed that, it may well be that you either are living in a community that is disconnected from the outside world, or you might be living by yourself on a farm completely away from everybody else. Because it's inevitable that you have come across people that have been struggling in recent times. We know that the issues around mental and emotional well-being have only increased, particularly over the last 3 or 4 years. More and more people are suffering from poor mental and emotional well-being. More people are suffering from mental illness. And we also arrived at a point that is one of the biggest killers on the planet. We'll get into that later, but that's a shocking and scary statistic to think that it's costing us, robbing us of so many lives, particularly young lives. But have you found that you've not been impacted in any way, shape or form by mental and emotional well-being and not noticed impact on the people around you? Okay, as I suspected, there aren't many hands going up because it's a sad fact of the world that we live in that there is more pressure, more demand, and more things that are likely to affect us than ever before. So who am I and who are we? So my name is Neil Shah. I run this organization, which is called International Wellbeing Insights, which I founded 21 years ago. International Wellbeing Insights is the research and consultancy arm, essentially the corporate arm of an international non-profit organization called the Stress Management Society. At the last count, the Stress Management Society has had the opportunity to reach more than 100 million people through the various different campaigns, projects and programs we've been involved with. International Wellbeing Insights works with a number of organizations and organizations globally. Our biggest clients include companies like Philips and Mars and various others, where we get to run programs of global culture change. They have the opportunity to run programs all over the world. And we'll see just from the representation we have the call today, that the work we do reaches pretty much every corner of this earth. And there are people that are representing many corners of this earth on this call today. We'll get into that very, very shortly. But I also want to give you a little bit of context in terms of what qualifies me to be sat here. Yes, I have 21 years of experience of leading programs and a background as a therapist. But prior to that, what led me to this path is in my mid-20s, I had a breakdown, which led to me attempting to end my own life. That was my motivation. That was my inspiration to get into this work. And I'm actually now grateful I had that experience, because if I hadn't had that experience, I wouldn't be here today on this call with you. And many of you, from particularly from those of you that applied to join this program or heard about it through some of our channels, have shared your stories, and many of you also have had sort of personal experiences, which is what has inspired you to be here today. So I just want to start by saying I'm so grateful to every single one of you to be here. And the main reason is that what you learn and take away from this program, I am confident that you'll be able to use as an opportunity to provide positive change to your communities, to your societies, to your teams, to your companies, to your organizations. And if I had to give this program a more authentic name, it would be how to change the world one conversation at a time. And I'm hoping that the things that you take away from this program will allow you to be that friendly, supportive ear and shoulder to those around you that could be the difference between them having a more challenging and serious experience to them finding and getting the support they need. One of our biggest clients that has commissioned us to now train 5,000 people up in this very program put something out on LinkedIn in December that at the champions we trained up for Philips have performed interventions which have already resulted in saving 6 lives. So that's the power of what we are here to learn over the next 10 hours. And I said, once again, I'm very grateful to you for giving up your time, energy, and money to be in this program. So it's a little bit about me. It's just an example of some of the organizations that we've worked with that allowed us to develop this program to share with you to be able to offer in whatever capacity that you are here today. So this is a workshop. This is not a lecture. It's not a webinar. I'm going to do my best to replicate an experience as if we were actually in the room together, which I know these days is becoming rarer and rarer. Many of our meetings and many of our discussions are taking place in virtual settings. So one of the prerequisites, I did notice one of the messages come in about technical issues with the camera. It is a prerequisite to have your camera on to be a part of this program. Why? Actual question, not a rhetorical one. Why do you feel it is crucial for us, given the nature of this conversation, and to ensure that we feel safe opening up and discussing and sharing quite sensitive things? Why is it crucial to have cameras on? Actual question, not a rhetorical one. Feel free to jump on your microphone. You don't need permission, just unmute yourself.
I was going to say that perhaps it's a good way of us as a group being able to check in on people when we're talking about things that might feel distressing or might feel triggering. And I think also it's that trust piece of knowing who you're talking to and getting that body language and that instant reaction.
Absolutely. It's to know that there is somebody there. How many of you would agree being able to see someone's eyes allows you to build trust and feel safe? A blank box with initials on it, who's there? Who's listening? Is there someone actually there? It actually creates a black hole. So that's one of the things, and particularly in your role as champions moving forward, I'm going to encourage everyone very strongly in your capacity as a champion, whoever you are talking to, please ensure you can see each other. And if that is worst case scenario on a webcam, that's better than not seeing each other at all. Because how much information is lost when you can only hear someone's voice or read what they're typing in the text box? We learn so much more about each other when we can see facial expressions, when we can see, the body language communication. But even in these little boxes, we're still limited, but it's a lot better than having no visual information at all. Statistically speaking, 60% of you on this call are not dressed from the waist down. I totally made that up. That is not true, but by your facial reactions, I know which ones of you are not dressed from the waist down. But, and as much as I joke about that, during lockdown, how many people did get out of bed, splash some water in their face, put a shirt on and sit down at the desk to work and not get up again until 6 o'clock? And many people have become accustomed to that. So you are showing the world what you want the world to see rather than giving them the full picture. If we were in a room together, how many would agree we'd get the full picture? You'd know where someone is, not what they want to present. So at least by having our webcams on, we've got access to a broader palette of information than if it was just voices or text. Laura, that's really good that you are dressed from the waist down, particularly if you are in a physical workplace. And we're going to get on to kind of introductions in a second. It'd be really nice to know who we have here. So we'll get to that in a second. But just want to add to that, this isn't my session. My colleague Duncan will be helping me to deliver some of these modules. This is all of our sessions. We want to hear from each other. We're going to learn and grow together. And the fact there are people from many different industries, many parts of the world, many different disciplines and cultures represented here, there is much that we can learn from each other. And I'm really going to encourage you to share. I want to hear from you. I want to hear your experiences. I want you to ask questions. disagree with me, seek clarification. Tell me to slow down. I'm from London. I get excited. Sometimes I can speak very quickly. So if you need me to slow down, please just, whatever you need at any time, I'm here to support your journey to becoming a mental health champion. And because of the size of the group, obviously, if there's anything sort of pressing that you want to share, you can stick it in the chat. But I'm not a school teacher. I'm a facilitator. So feel free just to jump on the microphone at any point. We are going to ask that if someone is sharing, allow them to have their perspective, and then you can share yours. So one voice at a time. There is a lot for us to cover over the next 10 hours. So I'm going to ask for everyone to be on time. That's at the start of the sessions, when we have breaks. If there's an exercise, be mindful of the time, because that will allow us to get through all of the content and the material before we finish this program. And I'm also going to ask very strongly that you are here now. This is an exercise in mindfulness. There are many things clawing on your attention in any given moment. And how many of you can think of at least 100, if not 1,000 things that you could be doing right now than sitting in this session with me? Excellent. If you're not holding your hand up, you're probably not being entirely authentic, because we do live in a world of demand and overload. I myself can think of 100 things that I could be doing rather than spending the time here in this session with you. But now that we are here, make your full commitment to be fully present. Be here now. So approach this as an exercise of mindfulness. There are various other devices that are likely to bling, beep, buzz, and vibrate. You may have two screens in front of you. You've got a phone, an iPad, and other materials that are likely to be clawing on your attention. If you can, turn them off, put them on silent, limit distractions. We're only here for a couple of hours together, and you'll have a chance to check the message afterwards. And if need be, we can have a short break at some point in between where you can check your messages. But that allows you to be fully present, particularly given the nature of the subject matter. Participate. What you put in will determine what you take out. If you sit there silently, passively, say nothing, do nothing, don't contribute, you'll get limited value from this session. Be open, honest, and respectful. There are people on this call that will have different opinions to you, different perspectives, look at things differently. That is okay. That is welcome. In fact, it's good for us to have different perspectives. And have you found that the world we live in today, if you don't agree to the accepted narrative, you are the enemy and you must die? I don't know how that happened. There used to be a point where we could agree to disagree and we could have debate, discourse, and discussion. Part of the challenge now is if you dare to question things, there are repercussions, and this is a safe space for us to explore and challenge and look at things in a variety of different ways, and for you to then formulate opinions based on those discussions. So have an open mind and, dare I say, have an open heart. I'm going to ask people's stories and personal shares are kept confidential. I would like a show of hands with your express commitment that what happens here is Vegas rules. What are the Vegas rules?
What happens here stays here.
Absolutely. What we discuss and share here stays here. There are a couple of caveats to that. Any of the content, information, knowledge, methodology I share, you have my full permission to share that outside of this space. Your personal experiences and your shares do not get shared out of this space, and please don't share anyone's personal experiences or stories that they share. And the only other reason that we would break confidentiality is safeguarding reasons. If something is mentioned in this call that impacts your safety or the safety of others, I have a duty of care responsibility to address that appropriately. In fact, we will talk about that in your role as champions towards the end of the program, about what should happen if there is a safeguarding concern. But I am duty bound, if there's anything here that presents a safeguarding concern, to take appropriate action. Okay, so the course structure today is our introductory session. We're going to be getting to know each other. We're going to be understanding what we're here to cover and to really start opening up this subject. The next phase, which will be tomorrow, is the ideals framework, which is the framework that governs our program. It's about how do we develop a connection and engage in conversation with people that might be struggling. Next week, we'll come on to actively encouraging and listening empathetically and what that actually means, how we can do that. And the last session is how we deal with people that are working remotely, safeguarding, signposting, and support. All of this is underpinned by how do we provide support? Because we are not here to be counselors or therapists. That is not the aim of this program. That is not what I'm here to equip you to do. I'm here to equip you, if this was an IT help desk environment, is to be first line support. When you phone the IT help desk and your computer's not working, what's the first thing they usually tell you to do?
Turn it off and on again.
Absolutely, reboot it. And if that doesn't work, they'll refer you up the chain to someone with more technical skills. That is our role. How we can provide a reset, reboot moment through asking the right appropriate questions, by listening and being present, and most importantly, holding space. What does that mean, to hold space?
It means to give the other person the space to feel what they're saying, and you're really listening as well. So it doesn't mean that you have to save them or have an answer
Absolutely.
to their solution, a solution to their problem. Just give them space, and quite often they'll come to their own conclusion.
Absolutely, Belinda. I couldn't have said it better myself. We're there to provide a safe container, not to give advice, guidance, feedback, suggestions. And unless you are a psych professional, you are not qualified to provide advice, guidance, or feedback. And I'm going to encourage you not to, because with the best intention in the world, you could do more harm than good. But actually, by holding space and listening and showing empathy, exactly as Belinda said, you may help them to form their own conclusions and be their own best therapist. And if that doesn't work, we'll talk about how you can refer them on to the appropriate resources where they can get additional support. So thank you, Belinda. You're absolutely correct. So what we're going to do in a moment, I am going to split you into groups. I'm going to put you into small groups of 2 or 3, and we are going to spend some time, probably about 3 to 5 minutes, looking at, well, what's in it for you? Why did you turn up here? Why did you sign up for this program? Why did you invest your time, energy, and money to be here today? So you're going to get to know your group, and we'll be introducing ourselves. So what you're going to be introducing in is, who are you? Where are you from? Your name, your location, and your objective. The role is, if you want to share that, you're welcome to do so. This will stay on screen anyway. But the most important thing is we're going to be spending a lot of time together, and we're going to get to know each other pretty well. So who are you? Where in the world are you? Or, where is your location? And what do you want to get from this program? I'm going to give you about 5 minutes to do that. Get to know your partners, and then we'll come back in, and you will get to introduce somebody else in. So decide in your groups who's introducing who, and you'll have the opportunity to introduce each other into the group. So I am just going to open up some rooms, so bear with me a second. Okay, so you'll either be in a group of 2 or a group of 3. So that will vary by room. And yeah, you'll have a few moments to get to know each other. Just opening the rooms now. Excellent. Enjoy your breakout sessions. I'll see you back in about 5. Okay, someone's just joined. We've got a few people that are.
You turn the camera, please.
Hello, is anybody there? Oh, this is ridiculous.
Hi, Jane. We're just adding you to a room now.
Thank you. Hello.
Jane.
Hello, is anybody there? Hello. No. Hello.
We're going to put you two in a room together. Just give us 2 seconds.
Hello, is anybody there? Hello. Oh,
Hi, Jane. You should be going to a room now.
okay, thank you. Any luck?
Should just be moving now.
Right, okay. Do I press join room?
Yes, please first join room.
Hi, Jane. Are you still here? Hello. She's still showing here. Jane. Hello. Alicia. Why are they showing you?
Do it here with them. Do it with them.
Okay, closing the rooms and bringing you all back. Okay, welcome back, everybody. So just as a reminder, when we open up a breakout room, which we're doing pretty regularly throughout the sessions, you'll get a pop-up that says accept. I think some of you may struggle, but may have accidentally clicked decline. So just if you click the accept button, I'll put you into your breakout sessions. So we'll get started. I'm going to go around you as I see you on the screen. And what I'd like you to do is if you did manage to get into a breakout session and had a discussion, you please introduce your partner in. If for any reason you weren't able to get into a breakout session, we'll obviously help you for the next time. But if you could introduce yourself in, that would be great. So Adele, you are the first person on my screen. Would you like to introduce your partner or one of your partners?
Yeah, so I have a technical difficulty hearing my partner, so I'll introduce myself and Jean can herself. So as you say, I'm Adele. I'm a HRBP here, located in Stockholm, Sweden. And what I'm hoping to gain out of this course is to get new skills to actively support my colleagues and implement good mental health practices across our company.
Fantastic. Thank you, Adele. Welcome. Next on my screen, I have Belinda. Hi, Belinda. Did you manage to get into your breakout room okay?
Hello, yes, I did. Yes, so my partner was Cam, and he's in the Midlands, and he's I think something to do with financial advisor, and he's also doing his counselling qualification. I think he's just passed level 2, and he's also doing coaching and mentoring. So that's his objective, to get as much out of this program as possible, to have support with that, really.
Fantastic. And just for our international friends, that will be the Midlands of the UK, in good old England. So yeah, for those of us that are in the UK, if you could just, as I said, we have quite an international contingent. Please, help make it easy for them to understand where in the country we are. Thank you, Tracy.
Yes.
Tracy.
Hi. Yes. Sorry, hi. Just trying to get my mic off. So I was talking with Patricia. Excuse me. She's a project officer and is currently in Uganda. It's 6:30 her time over there. She works for a company that goes out and supports young people who might be affected with HIV or genital mutilation, and the idea is that their health is quite badly impacted on this, so they're looking at completing this training to become a champion, so they can actually go out into their community and champion this for everybody that's there.
Thank you, Tracy, and thank you, Patricia, for being here. And we're really hoping that the skills that you learn can have a positive impact on the communities you work with. And I'm really grateful we were able to offer you a scholarship place to attend the programme as well. So thank you. We'll come back to you in a moment, Patricia. Paul.
Hi, how are you?
Hi.
So my partner, one of my partners was Louise, and Louise works for a homeless charity in Glasgow in Scotland, and she's manager of learning development within the charity. So she said that they're working on a strategy at the minute for staff and well-being, and the support that you can offer them, because a lot of the organizational staff have come from homelessness backgrounds, and also dealing with the day-to-day activities that they do, and helping them to best identify their needs and the support that's there for them.
Wonderful. Thank you, Paul. Sophie.
Sorry, my mouse is very responsive. So yeah, I was talking with Sam. I don't think I found out where Sam was, but she's in the UK somewhere, and she's in the office. So Sam works for a big company called SSC, which is something to do with finance, I think she said. And she is a mental health first aider. That's her main role. She progressed from, she was kind of doing project management, developing work, and then trained as a mental health first aider in, I think she said 2018, and then saw that there was a need for an actual role within the company. So now she has this as her role, and she's works with, I think, teams in 6 countries. So, and has then mental health first aiders under her. So they come to her for, yeah, she organises all that basically. And she's doing this to see how she can like develop and, yeah, become more marvelous at what she does.
Thank you, Sophie. And Sam, just before we move on, where in the UK are you? I'm just going to write this down so I've got a sense of where everyone is.
I'm in Essex.
Essex. Lovely. Excellent. Thank you. Cam, who is your buddy?
Hi, Neil. Belinda. Belinda's an HR advisor who works within a construction firm. She lives in Woking in the UK. Belinda's also a mental health first aider. Her objective, actually, she also does complementary therapy, working with clients on an energetic level. So a lot of coaching, talk therapies, clearly very passionate about working with her clients. She's been doing it for about 10 years now. She's seen some amazing breakthroughs with her clients, which is clearly evident and really good to see. The objective with this course is perhaps to learn more tools and resources and support structures that she can continue supporting others with.
Beautiful. Thank you. Rose. Rose? Got Rose Lodge Jane. Your name hasn't come up. So you're on mute. You've got to unmute yourself.
You always get one, and it's me. Okay, yeah, I'm Jane Evans. I was in Paul's and Louise's group of 3, but we had some technical problems. So yeah, I'm from Lichfield, Staffordshire in the West Midlands, England. I run a residential care home for Italy. I've got round about 50 staff, but obviously mental health is a big thing at the moment. So I am trying to get my head around everybody's mental health. Everybody's different. We've all got different personalities, but it's just knowing the right thing to be able to do and be signposted to the right places.
Thank you, Jane. India.
So my partner was Colleen. She's from South Africa, and I believe she's a social worker for part of the government, and she's 2 hours ahead from us. And she said that her main goal is to help people around her that don't always have access to private insurance, and they only have state care. So she wants to be able to help people that aren't able to access as much as other people.
Thank you, India. India's located about 5 meters away from me because she's one of my colleagues, and she's literally just on the other side of the office, which is maybe why we had a little bit of feedback. So yeah, thank you, India. Louise.
Hi, so I had Paul in my group and Jane. So Paul works with a natural health company and he's based down in London, but he's from Dublin. His main objective is he's already qualified as a mental health first aider, but he's wanting to build upon that, develop his confidence around having conversations with his colleagues and teams and things. So yeah, it feels like so long ago. I should have wrote more notes.
Fantastic. Thank you, Louise. Spencer.
Hello. My partner, get my notes here to make sure I have them right. My partner was Kathy McKenna, based within Ireland. She's an HR professional that is coming in, like I think similar to all of us, in finding different ways, personally and professionally, to be a better champion within locally, if there's opportunities within the community, just from isolation, depression, so challenges that we're seeing, but also in the workplace, workforces going through redundancies, and taking a look at the impact that that's having around engagement. So just all around opportunities from all of the pieces that are happening within personal and professional lives to find ways to do that better.
Thank you, Spencer. Who have we got next? Steve Hopkins. Oh, you're on mute, mate.
Yeah,
So,
hi. Can you hear me okay?
Yep.
Yep, sorry. Yeah, so it's Steve Hopkins. I work for a company called Maudsley's based in Bristol in the southwest of England. I look after currently HR, quality assurance and health and safety for my sins. Sorry, I was in a breakout room on my own. I don't use Teams that often, and I wasn't sure how to initiate the chat with the other person, so I was sat there on my own, so apologies for that. Yeah, Objective, we're a small company, 29 people. We don't have any people trained in mental health awareness. It's a subject that keeps coming up more and more, especially with our accredited contractor and construction. So yeah, just figured I would try and tick that box.
Thank you, and welcome, Steve. Colleen.
Thank you.
Hi, good evening. For me, it's evening, but hello, everyone. I was paired with India. Hope I'm going to do justice to what she shared with me. She's, like you said, working in the office there. She's the office manager. And I think her aim is also to be aware of the colleagues around her and to know, how to reach out and when to know when somebody is not okay within her space in the working environment. Yeah, that's it.
Thank you, Colleen. Laura.
Hi, good day, everyone. I was paired up with Rob T. Wave, Rob. Hi, Rob. Okay, he works for the Ronald McDonald House in the UK, and he is a people officer, which we in the States call HR. He's in Birmingham in the UK, and his objectives are to help support well-being in the workplace and to help people be their authentic self at work. And we had a nice start of a discussion regarding the balance between mental health and physical health. We started talking about that, and then the breakout room ended how much they're interconnected, and that interests both of us.
Fantastic. Thank you, Laura. And we may as well go to you, Rob, if you could reciprocate.
Yeah, fantastic. Hi, everyone. So I spoke with Laura. So Laura's a police officer from Maryland in the US. She's actually a lieutenant. And within the police station, they've also got a DEI committee and a health committee. And one of the main objectives for Laura was to help support health and well-being, not only within the police department, but help within the community as well. Obviously, they come into contact with the community quite a lot and trauma potentially. So yeah, it's really key and really important.
Absolutely, that's a really honourable objective. We recently had Greater Manchester Police that actually had quite a few people that went through this programme, and what was interesting is the makeup of the police force wasn't representative of the makeup of the community, and actually some of the skills that came out of this were allowing them to build those bridges and be able to engage and communicate with the community in a way that they weren't seen as outside of them, if that makes sense, and they weren't seen as the enemy, so to speak. And I think that there's really powerful opportunities on how we can all be change agents. And I think again, I'm really grateful that Laura, that you're here, because some of the work that we've done in the police services around the world have been able to provide skills that have made a really powerful difference. So thank you. Kathy.
Hi everyone. I spoke to the lovely Spencer Lemish, who is in North Carolina, like myself, working within a HR role with Foot Locker at the moment. Spencer, I hope I do justice to the amazing story you told me. But Spencer is currently in his role championing diversity and inclusion throughout his organisation, trying to engage people from the ground up at onboarding stage. He began this in 2017 with more of a focus on the LGBTQ community, but this has since expanded into wider diversity and inclusion. His objective, I'm going to summarise your objective, Spencer, I'm sure it's wider than this, was that you felt it was really important to consider the full person, to bring well-being into that diversity push, and you want to increase your skills that will allow you to do this. And Spencer also had a beautiful summary of what he wanted to achieve, which was to encourage people to be kinder to the other people around them. And we also had a great chat about isolation, comparing where I am based in quite a rural part of Ireland to maybe the experience of a city in America. So very, very large kind of big differences there between population density, but how isolation can be a real issue in both environments. So it was a great chat. Oh, I think you're on mute, Neil. I can't hear you.
Sorry about that. Someone decided to mute me. I think one of the beautiful things about this program is because we have people from various different parts of the world. Yes, there are differences in our cultures, in our countries, in the day-to-day experiences that we have. But the one thing I've learned from doing this work for now 21 years is there is far more similarities than there are differences. And there's far more that we can learn from each other's experiences than look at how we are separated by geography and culture and religion and ethnicity. And that for me is really one of the most powerful things that come out of this program, is how much we can actually learn from each other regardless of location and day-to-day life experiences. Thank you. Patricia.
Oh, well, thank you very much. Hi, everyone. I was in a group with Tracy Bell, and she is a well-being manager. She is based in Oxford in the UK. That is where she is located. And her objective for joining this program is that she wanted to help her team that she works with to ensure that they have a good mental health amongst themselves. And she works mainly on research, targeting the pesticides and everything related to that kind of work. So she finds this program more interesting, and that she'll be able to go back and impact on her team that she works with. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Patricia. Okay, I'm just looking around the screen. Who have I missed? Sam, have you had a chance to share and introduce your partner yet? Okay, there we go.
No, so I was partnered with Sophie, and Sophie works in finance and product, international development. Did you say the company? But I can't pronounce it, so I'll leave it as that. She works in Brighton in the UK, but most of her colleagues are actually in Kenya. So, and the reasons why she wants to join this course is to understand about dealing with remoteness and mental health. And some of the projects that she works on can be quite upsetting and challenging, and it's how to manage that herself as well, and others around her.
And that's a key part of this program. There is a lot of guilt, shame, and stigma associated with this subject wherever you go in the world. But there are some regions where there is a higher level of comfort in opening it up. Wherever you are in the world, there is a lot we need to still do. And it's easy to look at, for example, Latin America or the Middle East and say, well, they don't have any framework or language around this. It's not an easy or comfortable subject, and they take no action. I mean, it would be easy to look at it that way. But you also got to bear in mind, in Western society, the main cause of death for a man under the age of 45 is what?
Suicide.
It is absolutely suicide.
Suicide, yeah.
Rapidly becoming the main cause of death for 15 to 29-year-olds on planet Earth. 1 in 4 military personnel in the US, 4 times as many military personnel in the US die as a result of their own hand than from active combat. People that literally put their lives on the line for a living are more likely to die as a result of their own hand than of active combat. How have we arrived at a point where mental illness is robbing us of so many young lives? But also, it's something that's still so taboo and we don't even talk about. If you remember, there was an illness a few years ago that we didn't talk about anything other than that particular illness. You turn on the news, there'll be round-the-clock counters for how many people have caught this illness and how many people have died of this illness. We have another issue which more people experience and more people die of, yet no one talks about it. There are no round-the-clock counters on the news for this. And some of the data that's come out recently is horrifying. In October 2020, in 1 month, in the month of October 2020, more people committed suicide in Japan than died from COVID in the whole year of COVID, in 1 month. Didn't make the news stories. We're now starting to see the repercussions. And why this is so important is more people are suffering than ever before. If you're a young person growing up in the world today, it's a pretty scary place. You don't know what's going to happen next. With wars and political instability and, you know, financial challenges and God knows what else. So our ability to be able to connect and reach with people long before they have a more serious issue, hopefully will allow us to prevent more young people being put into the ground. And that's why I am grateful that you're here. And before I go off down a rabbit hole, I just want to make sure everyone's had a chance to introduce themselves. Tracy, have you introduced yourself? Or your partner, Tracy Bell? Yep, you have. Gemma?
I haven't, no. So I spoke with Ken Loy, who's joining us from Jamaica today, and he's actually a rural educator, and he works with an age group between 12 and 19 years old. And his real objective for joining us is he wants to be a better teacher, a better friend. But also, he said, as a black man, there's a real stigma around mental health and just talking about your feelings in general. So he'd like to, you know, learn more here so that hopefully he can spread more knowledge in the community and also help his students. So that's what he's looking to do.
Amazing. Thank you. And thank you, Ken Loy, for being here. Would you like to share, Ken Loy? Showing us on hold.
I don't know if Ken Loy might have left because he said that he might have to go. So I don't know whether he's on the call still.
No worries.
I don't mind introducing myself.
I can see him. There we go. Hi, Ken Loy.
Oh, he's there.
Hi. Hi, everyone. Thanks, Gemma, so much. Yeah, I'm on my lunch break, but I got here with the lovely Gemma. She's from Southeast London. She's the head of people and culture, and I call her the well-being strategist. She has a lovely history of volunteering, especially the Samaritans in UK, where they do the interesting thing of having a 24-hour hotline. Persons can call in and talk. They provide emotional support, holding a space. And she taught me about that, you know, teaching empowerment. And she did share that, you know, the little personal experiences with family members who struggle with their mental health. And she's here to hone her skills and just improve the services that she provides.
Amazing. Thank you, Gemma and Ken Loy. I think we've just got Jane and Alicia left. Jane Evans.
I've introduced myself, but I'm not sure whether Louise did from Scotland.
Okay, we've got 2 boxes with you, Jane, so that's where I got confused. There's another Jane Evan box as well. That's fine. Where do we have? Who hasn't been yet? Louise. No, you've been, haven't you? Yep. Alicia. Alicia?
Alicia's the
I
one.
was telling you that they got comments in the chat.
Okay. Oh, yeah, I believe she doesn't have a microphone. Let me jump to the chat. Okay, we've got our introduction in there, originally from northeast of the US and is now in the Midlands. Thank you and welcome, Alicia, and we look forward to hearing and seeing you tomorrow. Okay, so that was important. We're about to undertake a journey together, so it's important that we know each other, or at least start to get to know each other, because we're going to be opening up some quite sensitive topics of discussion. We're going to start with that. We're going to get straight into it. Let's just see what happens right now with our current skill set when we face a situation where it's 9 a.m. on a Monday morning, the phone rings, you answer it. It's a member of your team, a colleague tells you they're fine, but they have been signed off work with stress. They're experiencing extreme stress and they cannot attend work. This person is usually the fun person in the workplace, but over the last few weeks, they've been clearly showing signs of distress. Coming to work late, they look disheveled, bags on their eyes, they're clearly not sleeping well, their work quality and productivity is decreased, mood is low, they've been snappy, angry, irritable. They've been acting out of character. It's normally a fun, friendly, approachable person, but they're now withdrawn, unapproachable. There have been rumors going around that there's something going on in their private life, but nobody's really wanted to ask because talking to this person isn't as enjoyable as it used to be. And also, you just don't want to pry. This morning, this member of your team sounds a little strange. Enough for you to notice, but you're not as sure. There is something, your spidey sense is saying there's something not right here. How do you deal with it? How do you respond? What do we do? So, actual question, not a rhetorical one. What we are going to do, we're going to put you back into breakout rooms. And if for any reason you cannot access the breakout room, whoever is left will stay in this room and this room will become an overflow breakout room, if that makes sense. So if you don't make it to a breakout room, whoever is left in this room, you can have your discussions here. And I just want you to explore some ideas, some thoughts around what you can do, how you can interact with this person in a way that is likely to be supportive and helpful to them. There is no right or wrong. We're just kind of getting a baseline reading. We will explore this exercise again at the end of the program, and hopefully you'll be better equipped to be able to have those discussions at that point. Okay, I'm just literally about to open up the rooms now, and if for any reason you find you're in a room where no one else is, if you leave the room and you come back to the central space, you'll be able to have that conversation with whoever is left here. Rooms are about to open. You will have about 5 minutes. I'll see you back shortly.
Is anyone there?
Hi, Gemma, you're not able to go into your room?
I think I've been pushing to different rooms. So first of all, I was in a room and then I was being put on hold. Then I joined, I think it was room 4, and then I was taken out of that and put in room 7. And when I joined that, it just had someone's initials and on hold.
Do you want me to put you back into room 4 then?
Or whatever room I'm supposed to be in. I don't know. I don't think that was the first room I'm supposed to be in.
I think whoever was in your room, maybe things are glitching for them as well, but you guys can hold the space here because we'll just stay muted because it seems that there's 3 of you in here. So if you guys just want to do your task in here.
Okay, no props. I think we're all going to work from this room, Steve, Ken, if that's okay.
Yeah,
so have you got any
fine.
thoughts? Have you got any thoughts on what you might say to the person that's on the phone? Oh, you're on mute, Steve.
I did, but Steve,
is that better?
Yeah, that's it.
You can hear me now? Yep.
Yep.
Okay, brilliant. Sorry, this is the second breakout meeting that I've not managed to get into, but somehow managed to squeeze into this one. Yeah, I don't know about you guys, but for me, it's a potential HR issue, I guess. So it might sort of spark a decision where you have a meeting with this person to discuss obviously what's happening and try and resolve it from there.
So I was thinking in the moment, if I was receiving this call, whether I was a manager or HR, I think the person says, they said they're fine, but they've been signed off. I'd almost want to express, thanks for letting us know that you're signed off. We can support you while you've been signed off, so please don't worry, because there might be a bit of fear there where they're being signed off from work and they're not really sure how that might come across in the workplace perhaps. And then I'd probably just ask them how they're feeling now about everything, because it sounds like they might have things on their mind. And I'd probably just try and ask a couple of open questions, like how are you feeling now? How have things been for you recently? And then just see if they'd open up a little bit and share.
Yeah, for sure. Definitely. Go ahead.
That sounds
Sorry.
good. No, you're fine. For me, I was saying that depending on my schedule and theirs at that 9 a.m. slot, I would actually want to invite them either to go for like a walk or come over and have breakfast, or just type of change the environment to kind of, as Gemma said, like find out what's happening. If they're unable to come over, or I'm able to go over them, or they don't want to meet in person at all, I'm just doing a phone call. I'd want to have a chat to find out, as Gemma said, like, how are you right now? Thanks for opening, thanks for calling me, and thanks for like choosing me to open up to. And then hold that space for you to kind of vent if you want to, and see what we can do there. Because as far as I said, when we were reading the activity, it said that we realize that there are signs, but just want to allow them to kind of comfort and save, rather than saying, hey, I know you're stressed, I know this is happening, and coming off so aggressive.
Yeah, I think that's
Hi,
really
everybody.
important actually. Hi.
I started my mic at least.
Oh, great.
Hi.
We were just talking a little bit about how we would sort of speak with the person that's ringing in, and I think overall we just want to try and express that we're there to support, and hopefully sort of maybe ask a couple of open questions around how are they feeling now, and sort of see where that takes us without being too pushy or sort of interrogating them, because I can imagine if someone's just been signed off with stress, they're feeling stressed, so the last thing they want is a conversation that's going to make them feel more stressed perhaps.
And then Gemma, I have a question, maybe you guys can answer quickly. What does it mean when it says sign off?
So it's when a doctor has said that you're not fit to work because of a physical or a mental health illness, injury, or anything like that. So it means that you're not fit to work, and you've seen a professional doctor.
Oh, okay.
It normally
Right.
comes after 7 days, doesn't it? The sign off in terms of the doctor's a note from a physician as such.
It's very different. I think being from the US originally, I think that it's a very different concept. I have a unique ability to compare the two, and in the United States we don't get signed off, whereas in the UK you can have oft from short term due to stress or some health issue, whereas in the United States that's not an option always.
Yeah, there's probably other rules as well, I'd imagine, globally in other continents and countries.
Thanks for explaining, because I was kind of struggling to wonder if that person would be allowed to come back to work, or did they lose their job, or is this like a little break? But yeah, thanks. I guess our time is up though.
Sure where Neil's gone.
I'm sorry, I'm not quite sure what's happened. I've been talking away for the last few minutes and no one can hear me because I've been having some technical issues. So my sincere apologies. But Ken, like it was a good, very clarifying point and that you'd asked, because in different parts of the world, there are different regulations and policies around this. And in countries where you cannot go to a physician and say, or a doctor or a GP and say, I'm struggling mentally, emotionally, and I can't work, it will show up in other ways. Because if someone's not fit to work, they're not fit to work, right? But it might show up as this person is sick with this, that, or the other. And if we found, particularly in countries where there isn't a lot of kind of discussion around this, we found this with some of the work we've done in the US and Middle East, where it just shows up in another way. Those people still are absent from work. The point here is that if we recognize someone is struggling and it's showing up as I cannot engage with work or society or my community or whatever, what do we do? So what did you come up with in your discussions? How would you react to that if we are aware that someone is struggling, either because you are in a country where it can be reported and give a legitimate reason for not attending work, or it's shown up in another way where we are still aware this person is compromised, but maybe it's not in the same way it would be, say, for example, in the UK, where it's been signed off by a doctor. What did you come up with in your discussions?
I'll jump on it because my lunch break might end soon. But my little group, we were here with Gemma and Steve, and I think Alicia joined us very briefly. We decided about asking questions. Gemma, I know that Gemma was coming in with that volunteering experience there and kind of holding space for them to talk. Me being a little bit younger and a little, in terms of the age group I work with, I wanted to ask them if they want to go for a walk or maybe come over and talk a bit, but still having that conversation, just maybe changing the location of it based on our availability so that I could, kind of read some more signs and see how they respond to that physical interaction. And if we were unable to meet up, we had that conversation, not being too pushy, but just finding out, how are you? Is this a safe time to talk? Thank you for reaching out to me. And what can I do to help you in that little moment there?
Fantastic. And Ken, I couldn't agree more. Ask questions. In particular, what help or support do you need is a great question to ask. Allow them to take responsibility to request what they might need. Show empathy, which we'll get into. Even the suggestion of meeting up, going for a walk. I am here for you is what you're saying by making those suggestions. These are great examples. Fantastic. Who else has got something they'd like to share from their discussion?
We were also talking about Belinda and I about normalising challenges and normalising issues, that these things do happen, and there may be stigma from that person where there's, you know, a negative emotion, or, you know, like something like embarrassment or not wanting to speak or can't speak. So just sort of normalising, and again, picking up on the other guys, what they're saying in terms of that they're not alone, and then opening up that dialogue, you know, whether it's that gentle peel one layer at a time approach, or whether you sort of pick up on a cue where you think it's quite important that they need some professional help.
Absolutely. Yeah, great. Thank you, Cam. We'll take a couple more shares. Who else would like to share?
I think I was talking about it as from a supervisory perspective, that it's incumbent upon you. You have to do something, and you. To me, I'm just a direct person, but being direct with it, calling somebody into your office and not being rude about it, but, you know, if it's affecting work, it's affecting work. And also Rob and Adele were talking about, you know, making sure that you're in contact, not enough, but not too much, and not being overwhelming, and trying to figure out, you know, the best way to approach the person. But you have to act in some capacity.
Absolutely. And it's interesting that I can very much relate to your role. We worked with an organisation, a policing organisation here in the UK. It's actually the only police force that is 100% firearmed. Obviously, the landscape here is very different to the US, where most officers don't carry firearms. But there is one in particular that are 100% armed, and they protect all of our nuclear facilities. They're called the CNC. And one of the challenges they had with people putting their hands up when they're experiencing mental, emotional issues is the moment you raise that, your firearm ticket is taken away and you can no longer do your duty. You can't be in service if you put your hands up. So people weren't reporting. And actually that led to some serious challenges. And again, in that kind of landscape, how can we reach people knowing that by expressing that they are struggling, there could be repercussions? I appreciate that the framework may be different, but it's really important that we find an appropriate way to provide support and reach people before it becomes a more serious issue, particularly if they're in a role where there's a potential danger to themselves or the people that they're serving. So these are really valuable discussions. How can we have those conversations? What we are here to help and support without people fearing that there could be repercussions for them putting their hands up and asking for help. Do you have any thoughts on that you'd like to share at this stage? And obviously we can get into that further, Laura.
Well, I think the most powerful thing that we have, because it doesn't, thankfully, it's not that archaic here in our agency, and I work mainly with civilians, but by having people, it's just word of mouth, people get help. We put mental health training up all over the place for sworn, for civilians, for everybody. You know, we've got signs with QR codes in all of our bathrooms. It's just normalizing it so that someone knows, hey, this person reached out to get psychological help and they're still working. You know, it's done every day, and it's absolutely normal. And that to me is the most powerful thing we could do, all of us.
Absolutely. And Laura, that's really wonderful to hear. And exactly as you're saying, we've all got a responsibility to normalize, because the reality is, as much as everything that we're suggesting here on this call today is absolutely an appropriate way to approach this, in general terms, what typically does happen when we recognize that someone is emotionally, mentally compromised and they're unfit to work? If that was a real life scenario and someone said, I'm not going to be able to work for 2 weeks, in the vast majority of situations, what do you think actually happens?
Probably nothing.
Absolutely. Typically, it's, okay, well, let us know how you're feeling in a couple of weeks. See you then. And for 2 weeks, there's nothing. If you're mentally and emotionally compromised today and you sit at home for 2 weeks watching daytime television or scrolling through Instagram or Facebook or TikTok or whatever it is people do these days, does that make you feel better? I know in the few minutes every couple of days where I do scroll through Instagram, it makes me feel worse. It doesn't make me feel better. So actually, unless there is support or access to support provided and someone is left to their own devices, chances are there may be no improvement. I know in many countries around the world, there is a woeful lack of provision when it comes to mental health. People don't necessarily get access to support. And even regions and companies where support is available, the stigma and the barriers prevent people from putting their hands up to reach out for support. I can tell you, particularly in Europe, many companies will have an employee assistance program. It's now starting to become more prevalent in the US as well. But less than 2.9% of people use the support resources that are available, even though we know the scale of the issue is that the vast majority of us in some way or shape or form are impacted by mental emotional issues. We're not using the resources that are available. So this is something that is, for me, a big concern. It's because that stigma is preventing people from reaching out and asking for help and getting the support they need. Alicia, you had your hand up. Did you have something to share?
I think the problem that I've experienced on both sides of the pond is that people don't take mental health seriously when it comes to your first stages. And I think I have a car analogy because I have an ex-husband who needed a car analogy for everything. But it's if you don't change the oil on your car, if there's a leak, and that may take 10 minutes and just a few pounds to fix, eventually you're going to have to replace the motor, or instead of getting a fire extinguisher, you may have to rebuild your home. I think that when people need to feel comfortable in reaching out when they're first struggling in order to be able to access some sort of support, rather than waiting until it's so out of control that it's hard to get a handle on it, especially if you have to wait. And that is I think one of the biggest issues, no matter what side of the pond I was on, there's always that wait. So when you're feeling badly, as on a mental health level, you set an appointment and then you have to wait. And 8 weeks from now, when you actually get to see someone, it may be out of control by then. And you need to be able to talk to people in between then.
And absolutely, Alicia, early intervention is better than cure. The earlier you reach someone, the more likely you are to prevent it from becoming a more serious issue. But if we find ourselves in a landscape globally where people are not comfortable opening up, asking for help, or admitting that they are struggling, then we are not going to reach people early enough. And that is sadly where we are. In many industries and many parts of the world, we still have what I would describe as quite a masculine structure. And when I say masculine, I'm not talking about male, female. It's not gender specific. It's more structure, logic, order, process, find a problem, fix it. Grown men don't cry. Pull your socks up and get on with it. Soldier on. And that's part of the challenge, is vulnerability. Expressing the need and desire for help is seen as a weakness. For me, it's a superpower. People that can put their hands up and say, I'm struggling, are the strong amongst us. People can show their weaknesses and own them and express their challenges, are the strong amongst us. Sorry, I heard someone was about to ask a question, and I see Ken Lloyd's got the hand up. So I can't remember who was about to ask something, but if you've got something to share, feel free to jump up.
Sorry, I was just about to say that even in this scenario, you're saying that the individual hasn't reached out, but you as a line manager, you as colleagues have noticed changes. So we should be proactively, just as a friend, and just check in on them and say hello. And none of that has happened in this scenario. And that's what you would do to a family member or to your own friend outside of work. So we should be doing it. And as individuals, as colleagues, we work with them every day. You've noticed something is different. It might not be mental health related. It might be work pressure related. And therefore, the resolutions or how you resolve them are going to be different. But
Absolutely.
That's what alarmed me the most about this scenario that's been going for weeks and nobody has said anything.
Absolutely. And again, it's just an exercise for the sake of an exercise. But exactly what you said, as good human beings, if anyone around you, your neighbour, the person in the shop that you buy your juice from every morning, the bus driver that when you get on the bus, a work colleague, whoever it is, if you notice someone's changed, as good human beings, naturally the reaction should be, are you okay? Is there anything you'd like to talk about? Is there any way that I can help or support? And this is we find ourselves in a world where everyone is so focused on themselves that we miss the opportunities to support each other in that sense of community. And really, this is one of the reasons I'm so passionate about building this community of mental health champions globally, where we can support each other to go out and start making positive changes in the communities that we're engaged in. So yeah, thank you, Sam, you're absolutely right. Kenlo, you got your hand up. Did you have something to ask or share?
Just to share, but you are so spot on, especially about the different setup for work, because like, for example, some jobs out here, as a teacher, like we have a few days that we can take as what we call sick days. And when those days are done, that's it. Like you have to report to work no matter what. You have to report. And then there have been cases where you're like, oh, I'm going through a really hard time, and somebody's like, well, what is it? What is the doctor's diagnosis? And you could just say, oh, I'm feeling off. Like, feeling off is not sick. They need a medical report. You have to go and get that certified to say that, hey, I am not feeling well enough to come to work, and this is what the doctor said. And then there's some challenges with getting that diagnosis, because some persons don't take mental health as serious as they should. And my final point for me was that sometimes I do feel a little burnt out about sometimes trying to be there for everyone else, and then also having to be there for myself, and telling some other teachers, parents that, hey, I noticed this change in behavior in this particular individual. Could you follow up, or could you check? And they're like, oh no, that's fine. And I'm like, oh no, this is alarming. Can you please check it out? And then they don't. And then when something bad happens now, that's when everybody is running and saying, hey, they did not tell us.
And it's interesting because we're not just talking about an individual level. Something bad is happening across the world. You know, what if I was to tell you there's a health crisis, that 1 in 7 people on the planet will experience it in any given year? And sadly, these numbers are going up, not down. 1 in 4 on the planet will experience it on their lifetime. It costs 8 million lives every year. That is 14.3% of total global deaths. And this isn't directly as a result of this particular health crisis. These are associated issues as well. But ultimately, that's a huge chunk of the natural churn of human life. Obviously, people are born and people die. But 14.3% on average over the last couple of years of people that have departed this planet, mental health has been a contributing factor. And the health crisis obviously is mental ill health. And yet, even though it's that big an issue, it's still something that we have a huge amount of discomfort talking about. But also something I find challenging. If I offer the term physical health, what do people often think about? They think about eating healthy, going to the gym, looking after yourself, sleeping well, right? Physical health is often seen in the positive. The moment you mention the term mental health, how many would agree mental health is associated with depression and anxiety and schizophrenia? Now, we're still talking about two sides of the health coin, mental health and physical health. Why is one seen as positive and one seen as negative? Jane?
Yeah, I think it comes down as well. You cannot see mental health. You can see when somebody's broke their arm or they broke their hip or something and whatever, but you cannot see the inside of the head. You can't see. So everybody thinks, oh, everything's, you know, all flowery, like the story is usually okay. But then when that personality changes, that's when we notice things that have happened. We've gone through a lot at the home at the moment with staff. We've got rid of quite a few bad apples that were inherited staff. And we had a few with, you know, I've had people with mental health issues that came, we've talked about it, we've got through it. But I found the main thing that we actually came through it with is I've got a rush. I'm rushed all the time. It's a very stressful job. I've got so many staff to look after. I've got a fantastic director, but there's so much to do with regulators, with this, with that going on. I wish I had more time to communicate, because one of my psychologists said once, mental health psychologists with the elderly, they said, Jane, it's not how much medication I can give the elderly. You know what the best medication is? Communication. And I've never forgot that.
I'm going to add to that, Jane. It's not just communication, it's time and presence. And that's the primary thing that we're going to be giving to people in our role as mental health champions, is a little bit of our time and our presence.
Yeah, and empathy.
And absolutely, empathy. And there's a subset of skills, but it starts with time and presence.
Yeah,
because
that's what it is. That's
something that seems to be in short supply in the world that we find ourselves in. People don't have the time and the ability to give you their presence.
No.
And you know, underneath mental health, we've got a loneliness epidemic, which is now classified by British government, and it's been recognised as such by many international bodies, that chronic loneliness is classified as a mental health condition. In Britain, we've actually got a government minister for loneliness. That's how bad it's got. A government minister whose responsibility is to tackle the issue of loneliness, because loneliness leads to mental health. I live in London. I am not proud of the fact that it was voted as the loneliest city on the planet. There's 8 million of us that live here. How are we lonely? You are never alone. But there is a big difference between being alone and being lonely. The fact that we are here on this call, as much as we are connected, the shift from physical connection to remote connection has meant more and more people are feeling isolated. More and more people that are living in cities like London, New York, Dubai, where you may have traveled there and migrated there for work or for opportunities. Now all of a sudden you find yourself living in an apartment in a tower block, disconnected from the people that you would normally spend physical time and presence with. And this is something that is a real challenge. There's been a rapid transition into this virtual existence where we're missing the human connection. And there is a cost to this. There's both a cultural and a commercial cost. And the reason that we run programs with huge multinational organizations is, I mean, for those of you who need to take some figures back to your C-suite executives and to your directors, there's huge cost. In the UK alone, it's £105 billion. That was in 2022. That number is going up, rising by 16% every year. In the US, $300 billion per year, according to the American Journal of Psychiatry. Across Europe, 600 billion euros every year. That's 4% of the GDP is lost as a result of mental ill health. We don't have accurate data across Middle East and North Africa, Asia, South America, and Sub-Saharan Africa because it's not recorded, sadly. But we are seeing rises in things like drug addiction, suicidality, and various other things that could be connected directly to mental ill health. And the global costs is now estimated to be $1 trillion. That's according to the World Health Organization. Now, let's just give some context to that. How long do you think it would take to count to 1 trillion? To just get a sense of how big this number is. Can anyone hazard a guess?
How long does it take to count?
How long would it take to count to 1 trillion? So I'm going to get my calculator out so I can give you the correct number. Have a guess.
A lifetime?
A lifetime? Okay, that's a good guess. Anyone else?
500 years.
500 years? Okay, can I have a volunteer? Who would like to volunteer for this next exercise? It's not that painful. All right, Cam, you got your hand up. You volunteered. I would like you to count from 1 to 1 trillion, and we're going to all time to see how long it takes. Guys might need to phone your families and let them know you're going to be late home for dinner tonight.
All right, I should have studied more. Should have paid attention.
It would take about 32,000 years to count to 1 trillion. And that's, I'm talking counting a normal pace, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, like 32,000 years. That's how big a number it is. So big that most people can't even fathom the scale of this issue. Yet we still are quite late to the party in terms of taking action. And that's really where we have an opportunity to be a part of the positive change and to help us with our mission of creating a happier, healthier, more resilient world. So let's kind of start with, the big question: who has mental health?
Everybody, I think.
Everyone.
All of us.
Absolutely. Because the natural reaction is when you hear who has mental health, it's like, well, who's depressed, who's anxious? But everybody has mental health. Some days it's good and some days it's not so good. Some days we'll have a blue day and some days we'll have a bright, rosy, sunny day. And some days it will start to degrade till the point we get to mental ill health. We all experience stress on a day-to-day basis. Extended periods of stress, would you agree, have an impact on your mental health, and then you will start to have poor mental health? Are we all agreeing with that? And do you agree if your mental health is compromised for long enough, it can lead to mental illness?
Yeah.
But poor mental health isn't mental illness. Just because your mental health is compromised because you lost a loved one, you had a stressful time, relationship breakup, you lost your job, that period of poor mental health doesn't necessarily mean that you'll end up with mental illness. It doesn't mean that you'll have depression or schizophrenia or whatever. We all agree with that. Do we also agree that if you have periods of stress, it can affect your physical health and cause poor health? You might end up with, low immune system. You might end up with heart problems, whatever. Do you agree poor health over a period of time can lead to illness? That could then lead to cancer, diabetes, stroke, etc.
Yeah.
But do we also agree that when things impact your mental health, you stop looking after yourself? You're less likely to sleep well, to exercise, to eat well, to drink more alcohol, to turn to drugs, etc. So things that affect your mental and emotional state can lead to poor choices, which inadvertently are leaving you much more susceptible to both mental illness and physical illness. It's no coincidence, for example, in the US, where there is a high prevalence of issues around mental health and fractures in society, where they have an opioid epidemic, where a lot of people are turning to pharmaceutical substances, which sadly is creating addiction and death. It's one of the main causes of young people dying in the US. And this, for me, is the pathway. We're struggling, and then we're reaching for things that are actually making the situation worse. So everyone has mental health. So I want to take a little bit of time to understand what it means to us. And we're going to do a little bit of a self-evaluation exercise. So do you all have your handbooks to hand that you were emailed in advance? If you don't, drop a message in the chat and we'll just share the link. On page 8 from that workbook, I'm going to just give you a few moments to do that self-reflective exercise. So look at, what does mental health mean to you? When you have an experience of poor mental health, what's causing it? How does it affect you mentally, physically, and emotionally? How often does it affect you? How have you been dealing with it? What do you do when your mental health has been compromised, and what could you do differently? So I'm going to give you a few minutes just to jot some answers down in your notebooks or on a piece of paper or wherever. And then we're going to put you into a breakout so you can discuss this with some partners. So I'll give you a few minutes for that self-reflective exercise, and then we'll bring you back into a discussion. About a moment left, just start finishing up your exercises. And I'm going to put you into a breakout room so you can discuss what you learnt about your experience of mental health from that self-reflective exercise. Once again, if for any reason you struggle to get into a breakout room, bring yourself back into the main space, and whoever's left here can be a breakout. India, you had your hand up. I think you had a question or a comment.
I pressed that by mistake. I'm sorry.
That's all right. Well, you're here now. Do you have a question?
No, I don't.
Okay, no worries. Okay, so I'm about to put you into breakout room. Again, whatever you feel comfortable sharing from that self-reflective exercise, this is your opportunity to be able to share with your group. If you are listening while someone is sharing, your role is to listen empathetically. I know we haven't really explored what that means as yet, but please don't provide advice, guidance, counseling, or feedback. Ask questions, understand things from their perspective, but allow your body to understand what it feels like to be truly heard, and for someone to actually have an interest to explore what it is they're experiencing, for you to be able to see it from their eyes, from their perspective. So I'm just about to open up the rooms. Once again, if for any reason you struggle, bring yourself back into the main space.
Hi guys, I was in a room on my own.
Hi, Cam. Were you not able to get into a room?
I was in a room on my own, and then it kicked me out, and then I had to sort of sign back in.
Ah, okay. Give me a second.
That's right. So no one wants to talk to me.
There we go. You should have a couple of people with you now.
Okay. Is it going to put me back into a room, or?
We've got Belinda and Kenloy here now, so you should be with them. You guys here, Belinda and Kenloy?
Yep, I'm here.
Oh,
there you go. You guys, you got a buddy now, Cam.
Oh, I appreciate it. Hi, Belinda. Can you hear me?
Yep.
So I was in a room earlier on my own, so yeah, got kicked out. How are you getting on? Can you see me? Because I can't see you guys.
Yeah, I don't know why my camera's not working. Bit strange. But anyway, I can hear you.
Okay. Hi. How are things going?
Yeah, good.
So with regards to the sort of mental health evaluation, what does mental health mean to you?
Well, I didn't really know how to answer that. I mean, is it good mental health or is it? I mean, I took it as good. Like mental health means for me good mental health. So looking after my body is the main thing, because if you have a healthy body, you have a healthy mind.
Yeah, I suppose there's no right or wrong answer, is there? Good or bad? You know, it's individual to yourself, and you're right that both are linked, aren't they? One can't operate without the other.
Yeah. Exactly. What did you put for that one?
Yeah, I guess for me it's about probably similar in the sense that it's having a level of balance mentally where I can function efficiently.
Yeah.
You know, be happy, be at peace, you know, work towards goals, you know, being able to give, being able to love others, but just being in that space mentally where I can do that without other things going on.
Yeah.
Not that they won't exist, but they don't sort of tip the balance the other way.
Yeah.
And how about in terms of poor mental health? What do you feel would be the cause for that?
Well, I think poor mental health comes from not looking after yourself. Oh. I don't know where you've gone now. Oh God. Can you hear me?
I can hear you, yeah.
Yeah.
There you are, I can see you now.
Hang on. Yeah, so for me it comes from not looking after yourself, and also it could be a massive thing happens that someone in the family passes away, or close friend, divorce, house move, feeling overwhelmed.
Welcome back, everybody. I appreciate it's nowhere near long enough, and I wish that we could have 20 minutes, half an hour for this exercise, but there's a huge amount to cover. But I'd like to have an opportunity for us to share as a collective. When going through this exercise, how did it feel to open up and talk to your buddy or colleagues about mental health? How did it feel to kind of share your experience around mental health, even if it was only for a couple of minutes?
I felt quite safe to do so, actually. I kind of just went with the assumption we're all here for the right reasons. This is a safe space, and actually the more we open up, the more we kind of give of ourselves. So
yeah,
I felt comfortable, even though we don't know each other very well, which is surprising, I suppose, on reflection.
Absolutely, Gemma. And it's interesting, even if you don't know people particularly well, someone just being there to listen and ask the right questions can make a tremendous difference. And I'm sure we've had those brief interactions with a stranger that's actually given you a few moments of their time, and how that can change the course of your day or potentially even the course of your life. There's someone who's actually become a friend of mine called Johnny Benjamin. For those of you in the UK or Europe, you may have come across him. He's a very well-known mental health advocate. He wrote a book called Stranger on the Bridge. And his book was very much about his experience of in Waterloo Bridge about 8 or 9 years ago. He'd been suffering on and off with mental health for most of his teenage years and into early adulthood. He'd been institutionalized into a mental hospital in London. And one gloomy November Thursday morning, he escaped from the hospital in one of those gowns that you wear in a hospital with your bum hanging out the back of it, went to Waterloo Bridge, ready to jump off and end his own life. This was first thing in the morning, rush hour. Several hundred people walked past with this guy barefoot in a hospital gown and looked up and just carried on walking. It was the one person that stopped and looked up at him and said, "Are you okay, mate? Do you want to have a chat?" And talked him down, convinced him to have a cup of coffee, which basically is the reason that Johnny is still here. So by taking a moment to ask a question and inquire about someone's welfare and well-being, even if it's a complete random stranger, could change the course of their life. And for those who are interested, if you look up Johnny's book, it's called Stranger on the Bridge. You can find it pretty much anywhere. And it's a fantastic testament to how someone that shows a bit of compassion and empathy could make the world of difference to that one individual. Anyone else got anything else to share from their experiences? How many found similarities between what you and your partner were sharing? Many of you are shaking your head or putting your hands up and nodding. Now, here's the thing. It doesn't matter where in the world you are, what your life is, what role you have. When we experience stress, we feel all alone, isolated, like we're the only ones going through this. But when you sit down and have a chat with pretty much anyone from anywhere, you realize that actually there's a lot of similarities, right? We're all under pressure. We've all got too much to deal with, too many things going on, not enough time, etc., etc., etc. And part of our quest to open up these kind of conversations is to normalize it. You're not broken. There's nothing wrong with you. We're all at some point, in some way, shape, or form or fashion, having things that are impacting our mental and emotional health. And that's where, as I said, like just taking the time to talk about this starts to normalize it. But this is really what leads into our next discussion point, is what stops people from asking for help? What stops people from having these kind of discussions? What are the barriers?
I guess stigma, embarrassment.
Stigma, yeah, embarrassment. Access. But Kathy, that's interesting. Yes, access to professional support. But what about talking to friends, family, you know, colleagues? There are many people to talk to, not necessarily talking about to professionals, just in general. Belinda's saying fear,
feeling judged,
shame, being judged. Would shame be a fair
denial?
Yeah.
Being a burden.
Being a burden. Ken, I just saw that you put like previous negative experiences where you have expressed and been judged as a result of it. That's a really good example. So there's lots of barriers that exist that are likely to prevent people from coming forward and asking for help, putting their hand up and saying they're struggling, which is why, again, we don't know until sometimes it's too late. And sadly, for far too many people, it gets to the point where it's too late before we recognize there's something wrong. And there's two aspects to this: guilt and shame. What's the difference between the two? These are kind of, for me, the two key barriers: guilt and shame. What's worse, or what's the difference between guilt and shame?
Is one internal and one external? Is guilt
to a degree? Yeah.
Shame is Like, I mean, especially in the sort of in our culture, what other people are going to think. Whereas
Yes.
guilt is perhaps internal to a certain extent, where you feel, I don't know how to explain it, you feel guilty for asking for help, that, you know, there's some sort of weakness within you that you can't deal with.
So from our perspective, guilt is where it's a feeling we get when we did something wrong. I feel guilty that I did not come to you when you asked a question. So my guilt is associated with the act, if that makes sense. The act of doing something wrong or perception I did something wrong. Shame is attached to the whole self. I'm just a shit human being, right? Not necessarily attached to an experience, but are attached to the whole self. So there could be a series of isolated incidents or even one trigger incident, which now you've formed a judgment or opinion about yourself that you are just not a good person. Does that make sense? So guilt is episodic. Shame is, it ends up becoming kind of, you know, intrinsic about your beliefs about yourself. So when you feel guilt, you could take action to make up for it, to do better, to put it behind you, to learn and grow. But by feeling shame, there is no clear-cut comeback from this to feeling more positive about yourself, and carries with it a huge amount of stigma. And it's, if you're feeling any of these emotions, it's important that we start to recognize what are the differences. They both feel awful and embarrass people experiencing poor mental health. But when it's got to a point of shame, that's where people can start to make strong decisions about themselves, if that makes sense. I know what that's like from a first-hand experience, but more recently, like, you know, I arrived at a point where in a 3-month period, I started my first business when I was in my early 20s. By my mid-20s, I turned it into an international multi-million-pound business with offices in several countries and winning awards, including the Young Entrepreneurs of the Year award, winning the Queen's Award for Export, all these kind of things. And I was literally, if there was a way of describing my experience, it would be Wolf of Wall Street. Too much, too young, too quick. I was on a path that wasn't leading me to my ultimate destiny, and the universe gave me a course correction. In a 3-month period, I lost my business, all my money's gone, my cars are repossessed. Most of the people I thought were my closest friends turned their back on me. The person I was in a relationship with, I found, was cheating on me. All of a sudden, everything that I felt defined me was gone. And then at that point, I felt shame about myself as a human being, that I was a worthless human being because I had nothing to define me anymore. And that led to me asking, well, what's the point in being here anymore? The pain I'm in is so great, I'd rather not be here. If it was guilt around the failure of one aspect of my life, I could have found a way to deal with that or to get the support. But when the whole self is worthless, you start to think very differently. The reason I'm sharing this with you, if we get to the point where people have had challenges or struggles, long before they start to have strong thoughts and opinions about their value as a human being, there's a chance you can reach them and engage in dialogue to get them the support they need. Once people have made those kind of decisions, it's a weird thing to say, but making a decision not to be here anymore provides relief. Because there's an end. Does that make sense? I know that sounds twisted, but I can tell you from a first-hand perspective, there is a relief associated with that. But we are finding ourselves in a world where people are feeling like failures, feeling like they can't cope, that it's too much. So it's our ability to be able to reach people when they're having those struggles before it gets to the point where they feel like they're beyond help. But the part of the prevention or reaching people is the stigma. And there's two aspects to stigma. What is stigma, firstly? What does stigma mean?
Association.
Absolutely. Thank you. It's a negative, you know, something that's seen in a negative way because of a particular characteristic or an attribute. And how many would agree there is a strong stigma associated with mental health, mental well-being, globally. I appreciate the stigma is stronger in certain countries and certain regions than in others. But I don't care where you are, there's still globally a stigma associated with this. That's something I think we all agree with, right? Now, our definition is something that's seen in a negative way because of a particular characteristic or attribute. But there's two aspects to stigma. Firstly, the public stigma, the reaction that the general population has towards someone with mental illness. In general terms, obviously, you are a group of people that have volunteered your time, energy, and money to be on this program. But in general terms, what is the common reaction to mental illness? Someone you know has experienced depression, a breakdown, a psychotic break. How does society generally react to this individual?
They
get shunned.
Yeah, they're broken. You see them in the corridor, you turn around and walk the other way, you avoid the subject, you know, or you bury your head in the sand about it. If someone's broken their leg playing football, for our North American counterparts, we're talking about actual football. Please don't refer to it as soccer. That's an offensive term for anywhere outside of the US. So if someone's playing football and they have broken their leg, for example, would we turn around and walk the other way? Would we shun them? Would we ignore them? No. Do you need some help? Can I support you in some way? Can I get you a stool to put your foot up on? We would know how to deal with that. Why is it we are so much more comfortable discussing and supporting people with physical illnesses, even someone that's had heart disease, cancer?
I think
we're more likely and more comfortable to engage. Go for it, Kathy.
You can see a physical illness, even if it's cancer. You can see it on a scan. You can see where it's coming from, and it's very hard to understand its origins and therefore say, well, you know what, that won't happen to me, so it's okay. And I think it's very hard to quantify or understand mental illness, and we really do rely on our senses to understand things. So
absolutely, but also at some level we do understand because we all had an experience of it directly. I think if you've arrived at this point, unless you've been living in the jungle, in a community completely isolated from the rest of society, every single one of us has had a first-hand experience, particularly if you've survived the last 3 years. We all know what it's like when our mental and emotional well-being has been compromised. So the fact that there's still a stigma... Go for it, sorry.
Oh, I was just going to think, I think a lot of times people think they're going to make it worse. If they say anything, they're going to drive somebody right over the edge.
Absolutely, for a fear of making it worse. But actually, the chances are that person might just want you to ask how they're doing, or what do you need, or at least inquire about their welfare or well-being. So it's our reaction, the reaction the general population has towards people with mental illness creates this public stigma around it, which means I myself don't want to put my hands up and express how I'm feeling because I know how other people are going to react, or how I might react if I heard this from someone else. But then there's the self-stigma, where we've internalized that public stigma and the stereotypes. We've taken it on board and we start to believe that too. So this is where we need to break that stigma. And part of our role is when engaging with people in discussions, we find ways to remove the stigma, make it okay to normalize it, just as we have done so far today. By having these discussions and expressing our experiences, we've started to normalize and make it okay to not be okay. Because how many would agree the world we live in, many parts of the world, it is not okay to not be okay. We pretend and hide and mask our challenges and deficiencies, even when they are clear and plain to see. No, everything's fine. It's absolutely clear everything is not fine. So part of this is taking ownership and being able to express, and our ability to do so gives permission to others to do the same. It took me 15 years, and I work in mental health. I run an organization focused on mental health. It took me 15 years before I told a single person outside of the 3 people that knew about it at the time that I tried to end my own life. Because I worked in this industry, but I still carried that stigma with me. I thought, if I tell someone, they might judge me and they might not think I'm, you know, I'm the right person to be leading this organization. That's how long it took me to get comfortable to open up about my own first-hand experience.
I think
and
as well. Sorry, I was just going to say. I think as well. There's a general like a generation thing here as well. I remember as a kid being told, "Oh, you're fine. Everything will be okay. Just crack on with it." My brother had problems with education. He was diagnosed as dyslexic. He had ADHD. All the focus was focused on him, and it was always a case of, don't worry about Tracy. She's strong enough to cope with this. She can deal with it. She can handle it. And I think if you hear that enough, you start to kind of internalize it and think, right, okay, well, I've got to handle this by myself. I can't go to this person about it. I can't go and speak to my parents or my brother or a family member. You then start to kind of hold it in, and again, as you're getting older, with the problems that you then start to face with the stresses with work and school and everything else, you don't talk about it. You do kind of push it down and try and carry on as if everything's okay.
Absolutely. And it comes back to this kind of this sense of public stigma that we have a negative belief about an individual or group, like they're incompetent and good enough, they can't cope, they should just be able to get on with it. The prejudice we have associated with that is the agreement with that belief within ourselves and around us, and a negative emotional reaction, anger, fear, and then the potential discrimination that someone might actually be subjected to. We've spoken about, for example, like one of the clients we work with, the police force, where you can't do your job anymore, or you're deemed to be an unsafe person. That could be then have an impact on employment, housing opportunities, general health, or being able to progress in society or in relationships. And we then start taking it on. We start to believe what the collective are saying about ourselves, that we aren't competent, we aren't good enough, we aren't worthy. We start to internalize those prejudices, which is, that can then result in low confidence, self-esteem. And then that again affects our behaviors. We're less likely to ask for help, to try and pursue careers or relationships, and you find yourself spiraling, if that makes sense. How do we break this? It's just, okay, like you've got a cold, with a little bit of rest, you'll get better. You've hurt your back, some treatment and some support, and your back will return to normal. If you're suffering from a mental or emotional challenge or even illness, just like anything else, with the correct care, support, time, and attention, you can achieve a full recovery, right? Why do we not look at it in the same way? And this is really what we can do. This is something that can make a big difference. There's a National Alliance on Mental Illness, which is an organization in the US. 8 out of 10 workers with a mental health condition report that shame and stigma prevent them from seeking treatment. That's 80% of people, and this is a US statistic, but I think it carries true for most of us. 80% of people that struggle with mental health conditions are less likely or not likely to seek help because of shame and stigma associated with that. Has anyone got any thoughts on that? Because that's shocking. That, up to 80% of people are suffering in silence. And they'll probably self-medicate with alcohol, drugs, poor lifestyle choices, food, pharmaceutical interventions, rather than actually seeking help for the condition they're experiencing. What are your thoughts around that?
It's not good. Is it? It's definitely not good. And do you think sometimes it does all depend on the actual circumstance of the upbringing of the people, where they come from, like you've said? If they are a negative person, a pessimist, there's lots of things, because everybody's different. And I mean, yourself, like you said, you've dealt with it 15 years, whatever. and you've been there and done that. And that's why you are a good ambassador to do what you're doing, because you've been there, you felt it. And I think that really helps to spread it, to spread what we're doing today, because you've actually been there and done it. I find it hard because thank God, I've never experienced real bad negative mental health, but I am there to try and help anybody that have. And that's why I'm here today, to listen to you, to get some things from you so that I can help people.
It's interesting, Jade, that, we do find ourselves in a world where you don't see the whole person. We see the image that they want to project to the outside world, and Instagram and TikTok has trained us to show this image of ourselves to the world. In the same way, to a degree, even here today, we are showing a little boxed image of ourselves that we want to present in this setting. And many of you will have heard the term show your whole self or bring your whole self to work, which seems to be a bit of a HR buzz term at the moment. What does that actually mean? And there is much more to everyone than many of us will ever get to experience. And I think that there is value in authenticity, in openness, and showing more of ourselves than we can see. We can learn so much from each other. And I know, discussions around diversity, equity, and inclusivity tend to focus on the visible differences, the ethnicity or race or sexuality. But there is so much more to it than that. And actually, a society, a community benefits from having people from all kinds of different backgrounds, including neurodiversity. In fact, even people that have had illnesses, physical and mental, because through the recovery of that, what we've learned, we can share with others. Does that make sense? And some of the best ambassadors for mental health are people that have had first-hand experiences, because they know what it's like. So part of this is, how do we end that stigma around mental health? We need to stop the fear of rejection and discrimination that can delay the journey to recovery. Most mental health conditions are treatable, many relatively easily. Less than a third of employees who need treatment get the help that they need. And in some areas, as I said, like, again, this is a US statistic, mental health problems are the leading cause of disability across the US. So we need to challenge those misconceptions, see the whole person, no good, no bad, no judgment, this is who they are. Offer support, and using the right language, we can open them up. And this firstly comes down to how we define mental ill health. So just, off the top of your head, Ken, Lloyd, Rob, I see you've got your hands up. You may have points to share, but also while you're there, do you want to give us a definition of mental health? So Rob, you're one on the list. What have you got?
So mental health for me, my instinct, I go towards mental. I go towards depression because that's my experience, that's my lived experience, and that's the aspect of mental health that's the most relevant for me. As a more generalized one, you're looking at emotional. I look more towards psychological safety in terms of mental health as like a pure baseline. And that's really the core aspect for me of mental health. But just on your point previously about like authenticity and like belonging and being your true self, I mean, it comes back to like, especially in the workplace, feeling the proactive support as well. So like having an environment where other people are proactively supporting you. So if we look back at the example earlier on, that person didn't have a mental illness. They didn't have a mental health problem to start with. And it's something that developed over a couple of weeks where you had different behavioural symptoms, emotional symptoms, and psychological symptoms that were evident to colleagues who didn't reach out, who didn't support. And that's where some of the stigma comes from. So like I've experienced that a lot in my past. And one thing that I've happily done over the past couple of weeks is in the UK, our organisation celebrated Time to Talk Day, which is encouraging conversations around mental health. And I shared my story and my journey with I've had depression diagnosed for the past 17 years. So I was able to share a little bit about me, which opened up the conversation for other people. And the feedback from that, and the people that opened up who were previously hiding who they were, was absolutely fantastic, because we've now created an environment where we've upskilled managers to have these conversations, and we've created a safe space for people to absolutely own a part of who they are rather than have to hide aspects of their identity.
Absolutely. And it's a great point, Rob. By opening up and sharing your story and your experiences, you're giving other people permission to do the same. And that's how we tackle the stigma. We all get more comfortable talking about how we're actually doing. Thank you. Kenla, you got your hand up. Did you have something to share? We'll come back to Kenla if he's still got something to share. But essentially, our definition of mental health, should I say, is not positive or negative. It's how we think, how we feel, and how we behave. Because when our mental health is positive, would you agree we have positive thoughts, we have positive emotions, and our behavior and actions are positive? When we have negative mental health, we have negative thoughts, we don't feel great, and our behaviors are negative as a result. So this is really, for me, where we can look at this particular analogy to help us to really get a sense of where we are with regards to our mental health. And what will really help you is what we would call our bridge analogy. And I'd like to think of a bridge. This happens to be Tower Bridge in London. It could be Brooklyn Bridge, Sydney Harbour Bridge, doesn't matter which bridge it is. But do we agree? Well, actually, even before we get to that, let me ask you a question. We're getting a bit of feedback. Rob, I think it's coming from you. There we go. Thank you, Rob. So let's say this Tower Bridge in London, and we start basically loading it up with red double-decker buses, black London taxis. The elephants and giraffes have escaped from London Zoo because the fences blew down. We got some protesters on there protesting about whatever people are protesting about today. There's been a tidal surge on the River Thames, and the HMS Belfast, which is the museum battleship that's moored next to the bridge, has managed to get washed on. We've got issues at Heathrow Airport, and they've got a couple of Airbus A380s that emergency landed onto Tower Bridge. If I keep going in this way and put more weight, more load, more demand onto the bridge, what will happen eventually?
Collapsing.
It collapses, right? Do we agree it doesn't matter how well built the bridge is? Every bridge on this planet, with enough pressure applied for long enough, every bridge will ultimately collapse. We all agree with that, right?
Yeah.
Before it collapses, how do we know?
Cracks.
Absolutely. Bending, bowing, cracking, fracturing. When it's giving us those signs, what options do we have to prevent the bridge from collapsing?
Remove the pressure.
Absolutely. Alleviate the load or reinforce the bridge with concrete blocks and iron girders. How many would agree that human beings are exactly the same? Every single human being on this planet, you put enough pressure, enough demand, enough load onto them, they too, like a bridge, will collapse. We all agree with that, right?
Yeah.
And do we also agree that most of us find that there is more stuff on our bridge than ever before? You wake up in the morning, the first thing that most people do is they check their phone. Last thing they do before they go to sleep is to check their phone. We're getting information thrown at us in a way that most of us can't keep pace with it. On top of our own personal challenges on financial and family and work-related demands, there's wars going on in the world. There's a genocide happening in the Middle East. There's all kinds of crazy things happening on the planet. All of that stuff happens and ends up on your bridge. Would you agree with that statement? You're not immune to it. You don't have different bridges for different areas of your life. It all ends up in the same place. And we end up internalizing that. It's no wonder that so many people are getting to the point where their bridges collapse. But the good news here is there are signs. There are warning signs that ensure that we can pick this up at the Bowen and Buckling station to prevent the bridge from ever collapsing. Then you have the option to either take some load and pressure off, which I appreciate for many people is not possible because you have responsibilities, commitments, things that you cannot offload. But for every single one of us, if you have no option to take anything off the bridge, you do have the option of strengthening your bridge. Would you agree with that?
Yeah.
Many things that we can do to strengthen both our bridges and each other's. And that really, for me, is what this program is about, is to be able to provide that first level of intervention and get people to understand that no matter what you're experiencing, there are choices, there are options, there are things that you could do. And it doesn't matter how your bridge is today, there's always things that we can do to make it stronger. So our definition of poor mental health or stress is where the demand made on an individual exceeds their capacities or the resources they have available to cope with that demand. And many people are facing a situation where there is more demand than they have the capacity to cope with. So how do we ensure that we're giving them the relevant skills and support to be able to develop a stronger bridge? And that is what this program is about. And it starts with this framework, the ideals framework. The first step is the identification, the early indicators of mental ill health. And that means picking up those changes in behavior, getting to know what people's normal behaviors are so we can recognize when there are changes, to know at what level of mental illness it could be, mild, which is just a subtle change to your behavior. And I'll give you an example of this. It was actually in a few weeks' time, it will be 2 weeks since I lost my best friend, sadly to his mental health. He took his own life. And it was something that really hit me hard. And a lot of people, when something like that happens, they say to you, well, it's not your job. I said, well, it actually is. I work in mental health. Well, you couldn't have known. I did know because I was talking to him up until he stopped talking to me. And I took that to heart to the point where I actually considered running away from my job. Like I feel like a fraud. I failed the person, one of the people that was closest to me. But I knew he was in a bad place. I recognized it. I was talking to him. I did everything that I possibly could. Up until 3 days before it happened, I was speaking to him every day. I was trying to reach out to him. I had done as much as I could to not just develop a personal connection with someone I didn't know, but to deepen the connection around the specific issue that we're talking about. I was engaging regularly in conversations. I was encouraging him to take action, to seek further independent psychiatric help because I was his friend and I couldn't be truly impartial. I was encouraging him to take action every day, to go for walks, to read, to meditate. I was reaching out to him every day to listen to what he was going through and show him empathy and to safeguard, signpost and support. I'm not sharing that story with you to elicit your sympathy. It's to show that there are steps which in the majority of situations will be able to ensure the person gets access to the support they need and prevent a more serious outcome. But there are also occasions where someone is so committed to the decision they've made and they are gaining such a sense of relief from that decision, we might not be able to prevent that outcome, but we can maximize our chances of success, if that makes sense. Now, those identification pieces, as I said, like at first level, coming back to this experience, when it first happened, when I first heard the news, there was kind of firstly a sense of disbelief. And I was like, it wasn't real. I was just like, I couldn't even accept that this had happened. I remember going to work the next day. I heard, one evening that this had happened. It just happened a couple of hours before. Next day I turned up work and I had one of my most productive days at work because it hadn't sunk in. It hadn't registered. At that point, it was just like, there was a sick feeling in my tummy, but I was still able to conduct my daily responsibilities. Then it got to a point where, particularly up until the funeral, I was struggling and some days I had tears, but I could still get through my day-to-day activities. At that point, I was not sleeping well at night. I felt down. I'd lost my smile and my sense of humor. So I think what initially was mild impact on my mental health became moderate impact on my mental health. It was not until the funeral where I remember on the way home, I broke down in tears in the car. I couldn't drive home. I literally sat in a lay-by for a couple of hours. And we eventually got home. I think I spent the rest of the evening on the kitchen floor. I came to work the next day and my colleagues sent me home. They said, "You can't be here. You're a mess." At that point, it got to, I guess, quite severe, where I needed to get additional support. Why am I explaining this to you? As mental health champions, at what level are we intervening? Mild, moderate, or severe? At the point where someone's compromised, at the point where someone is not functional, or at the point where someone needs medical help?
Mild.
Absolutely. Yeah. And if you're picking anything up beyond that, it's your responsibility to understand what are the referral pathways, what can you signpost and send them to. But here's the thing, most of us, it starts with mild, and if you reach people at that level, those initial interventions can make the world of difference. This is why the early identification is key, is that being able to then develop a connection where that person feels safe and comfortable with you to open up, where they are going to engage in a conversation, where they're going to feel supported and encouraged to get involved, where they feel heard, where that you can also signpost them. Now, if you look at this framework and you reflect back on today's session, what do you recognize?
Conversation, engaging in conversation.
Absolutely. But, you know, forget the S. If we just talk about the ideal, you look at today's session, you might think we haven't actually covered that much today. How many of you would agree that we have done ideal today?
Absolutely.
We talked about what it looks like when someone gets impacted.
Yeah.
We've developed a personal connection with each other. We've got to know each other. We've shared our experiences, where we're from, who we are. We've all had a chance to engage in conversations, both as a group or in your little breakout sessions. You have been encouraged to engage in conversations with the questions and the opportunities for feedback. There's been chances for us to stop and listen to each other. You already know what ideal is, because it's very much what we've done so far today. Because, you know, it's interesting. People often get to this part of the session and think, we haven't really covered much today. Well, now you understand what it looks like to hold a champion session. It's exactly what we've done. So really, over the next few days, we are going to cover this in more detail. So it's said levels of mental illness, mild, moderate, severe. Duty of care for you is mild. The common mental illnesses that you're likely to come across are depression, burnout, general anxiety disorder, and stress. Many of these share the same symptoms. These are the things that you're most likely to come across. And there's way more information in your handbooks than we'll be able to cover today, as well as data around this. And we've already talked about changed behavior. How many think you could spot the signs and symptoms of some of these common mental illnesses and mental health challenges? Yeah. We talked about the changes in behavior, losing your sense of humor, changes in your physical appearance, becoming disengaged or withdrawn, people shutting down, not engaging, or become very animated and aggressive and very confrontational, people being exhausted. It could be gaining weight, losing weight, turning to substances, whether that be caffeine, sugar, alcohol, nicotine, pharmaceutical substances, recreational drugs. But our role is, as I said, is to pick up those changes in behavior and engage in the most appropriate way. So depression, these are some classic signs of depression. People losing energy, feelings of worthlessness, disengaging, a classic sign of serious depression where people stop bothering to get dressed, brush their teeth, shower, just can't be bothered. They're not showing up for themselves or their lives. Burnout, depletion. Literally, you're completely like exhausted to the point where you can't get out of bed. Negative thoughts, losing your self-esteem, not being able to function in all aspects of life. General anxiety disorder, where people feel panicky and fear. There are many organizations we're working with right now that are struggling to get people back into a physical workplace because of all the fear and anxiety that was developed during the COVID period. Now they want people to come back to work, and people are like, no, because they're scared of being in a physical workplace. The irony. And there are several companies we're working with on programs of gently encouraging people back into a physical workplace, either partially or fully. That on edge, irritability, tension, feelings of dizziness, palpitations, shortness of breath, you know, agoraphobia, where you're scared to go out of the house. And again, we're seeing a lot of young people experience this at a point in their lives where they should be out socializing, having fun, going to parties, where they are shutting down. And again, this is one of the hangovers of what's happened over 3 or 4 years ago, where people are fearful about engaging physically. We've talked about the rise in issues like chronic loneliness that's connected to this. This is where we have a role, but I need to ensure you understand the boundaries of this role. There's a little Venn diagram to put this into place. You have a primary role, like Laura is a police officer. Cam works in finance. Ken Loy and Patricia obviously have kind of the communities that they're supporting. You all have your primary role. Then you have a role as a mental health champion, which is what we are contributing as an extracurricular activity. How, you know, what we're able to put in from the skills and knowledge we've gained from this program, and also with the time that we have available. But you also have personal ground rules. I'm not asking for any of you to do something that puts you out of your comfort zone or is pushing you to do something that you don't feel safe or comfortable to do, if that makes sense. And that sweet spot in the middle of that Venn diagram is where we get the positive outcomes. So this is really where you have some homework exercises. And your homework exercise between now and tomorrow is to think about, what are your personal boundaries? From an organizational perspective, if you are here representing an organization, what is it that you're able to do in the confines of the regulations and the boundaries and the process and procedures you have within your organization? And the role boundaries, as I've said, the role boundaries are, you are not qualified, unless you are a psych professional with additional training, you are not qualified to give advice, guidance, or counseling. Even if you think it might be the best advice in the world, in your role as mental health champions, our job is to ask questions, listen, encourage, and when necessary, signpost the adequate support, but not to tell them what to do. So that is one of the role boundaries. Your personal boundaries may be that there are certain things you're comfortable with and certain things you are not. That is okay. I've had the opportunity to work in many challenging settings as part of the work I do, and there are some situations that have been challenging for me. And this is really where it's important that you understand what your boundaries are, so you're not pushing yourself outside of things that you are comfortable engaging in. So this is what I want you to think about is, you know, in those three areas, what are you comfortable with? What ground rules will you establish for yourself to protect your personal and role boundaries? So, and this is what your homework is for tomorrow's session, to spend a little bit of time reflecting on this, and maybe even put some notes down around this. If you need support in the interim, or you come across someone that needs support, there is some stuff in your packs. These the ones that are on screen are either UK specific or there are international. There are some additional international resources as well, which I will be sure to share by email for all of you. So there's a lot to cover. We've only just got started, but before we finish today's session, I want to allow a bit of space for questions, comments, feedback, anything you want to discuss and share before we close. So this is your opportunity. What do you want to discuss, share, or ask before we finish today's session?
I was just wondering what there was, like, the three boundaries: personal boundaries, organizational boundaries, and
yeah, so was that Sophie? Yeah, so I can give you some examples. So the personal boundaries, the personal boundaries should be that you're not taking this on, you're not personalizing, you're not taking away with you. How you can, no matter how challenging the situation is, that you are not then embodying it, because it will make this role very, very hard if you take everything that you're shared with you personally. An example being, we are working with several global organizations, Philips, for example, and my colleague Duncan was running a session exactly the same as this for them, and we are training colleagues to be mental health champions that are currently based in Israel. And there was some points where it came very close to Duncan's personal boundaries because they're exposed to different information than we're exposed to. And obviously we're seeing a certain situation playing out on our TV screens and on our social media, which they weren't exposed to. So Duncan had to put in some boundaries in place because there were things that were said and shared within that session which were not reflective of what he felt comfortable with and more reflective of what was being asked of in that session, if that makes sense. So it's no, we're not going to go there, and I'm not happy or comfortable to engage in such discussions, particularly when you're making judgments about a group of people, for example. Yeah. So we're not asking you to do things that you feel uncomfortable with. Don't take it personally or make it personal. Don't allow other people's experiences to trigger you, because the moment you do that, then you lose your ability to be objective, if that makes sense. Remember at the beginning we said, like, people can have their perspectives and you have yours. But I'm not expecting you to do things that you don't feel comfortable with. But also, we're not asking you to take responsibility for individuals or feel guilty if you aren't able to help them or resolve their issues. That would be, for example, a personal boundary. But the do's would be keeping that open dialogue with the broader community. Be open-minded. Ask for help yourself if you should need it. And, you know, not sharing personal information, etc. Organizational boundaries, you know, not taking on the organizational responsibility. Don't go against procedures, but work within the time you have available, balancing your day job as well as your role as a champion. Be aware of the processes, guidelines, etc. Involve other resources like HR, learning and development, the line manager, whatever. The role boundaries, again, as we've talked about, be friendly, listen without judgment. We're not there to fix. We're not there to provide promises. We're not there to provide professional support. We're not there to encourage bad behaviors or bad thinking. And we're also, you know, not to discuss private conversations with anyone else unless it's breaking safeguarding. Does that help, Sophie? Just to give a sense of what I was referring to.
Yeah, thank you. That's loads.
Wonderful. Excellent. Anyone else? Any other final questions, comments, or feedback before we close today's session?
Well, I want to give feedback.
Yes.
Patricia here. I just want to thank you for giving me this opportunity to attend this course because I have learned a lot. I have been speaking to a number of program participants. My own friends come to me for support regarding mental health, and I had very little knowledge on how to help them out. But with the little knowledge I had to help some of them out of the situations that they were going through. But this training, it's just been a few hours here, but I have learned a great deal. I've learned a number of things that I will also partake and share or reach out and support to the communities that I serve, and also my colleagues, and also the people that I live with, because this doesn't go beyond us, it's also within us. So it helps me as an individual, my family, and also the people that we work with. So thank you very much for this session.
Patricia, you're welcome. We're also grateful to have you here. You know, this is the first of 4 sessions, so we've got a long way to go with this training. But obviously the work you're doing, supporting people from very challenged backgrounds with HIV, I can't imagine, you know, what that must feel like to deal with that on a daily basis. So yeah, we're grateful to have you here, and we're hoping that things that you take from this program will better equip you to support the communities that you work with. Wonderful. Excellent. Anybody else? We'll take 1 or 2 more final comments before we close today's session, and then I look forward to seeing you all at the same time, the same place tomorrow.
I think I'm going to self-reflect. What I'm doing right and what I'm doing wrong.
Fantastic. Thank you, Jane.
Okay.
Okay, well, I'm going to hang out for a few minutes. If anyone's got anything else you'd like to share or discuss, I will be here. I'm so grateful once again for you all being here, being present and contributing your voices and your energy. See you again tomorrow for part 2, and we'll dig deeper into the Ideals Framework. Have a lovely evening, afternoon or morning, wherever you are in the world. Much love, and see you tomorrow.
Thanks
everyone.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
I
Can I
think
say
it's
something?
Oh, sorry, go on.
Can I tell you something?
Please.
It's not bad. I just have to leave tomorrow, unfortunately, at 12 because I came in, I was accepted on a scholarship last week, and I have another training that starts at 12 tomorrow that's not being recorded. So I will have to pop out then.
Okay, what we'll do is we'll make sure that the session is recorded, and we'll get you the recording so you can catch up. And you've got until next week, because there's 2 sessions this week and 2 sessions next week, so you'll have time to catch up anyway. And at the end of the session, there'll be the homework. So if you just catch up the homework, but you've got the resource material as well. So
I
yeah.
have that. I didn't see that in the email, but I saw it now once you sent it back to us. So thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Laura. We'll see you tomorrow. Bye.
Yeah, I might have to go half an hour early tomorrow because I've got an appointment that I need to go to. So if I could have the recording, that would be lovely.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll share that. No problem at all.
Thank you. Good night then.
Thank you.
Good night.
Have a lovely evening. See you later. Bye-bye.
Will do. Thank you. That's it.
No, but thanks for today, Neil. It's been good. I think we all need that gentle nudge, don't we? You know, things that we know in our gut, the things that we want to do in terms of purpose and fulfillment, especially with supporting other people. And this has been good in that sense, that it's given me that nudge to, I guess, as a light worker who believes so much in the universe as to why we're here. But it's given me that nudge to actually show up as myself and just put myself out there. You know, everything that we've, similar to you, that I've been through, I think I've always thought it's a superpower. And if we can change one life at a time, you know, slowly we can start to turn the world, can't we?
Absolutely. Thank you, buddy. I appreciate you being here.
Yeah,
See you
no,
tomorrow.
appreciate it. Yeah, thank you so much. Take care. Cheers. Bye.